What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a new episode of Buy, Hold and Sell. I'm going to get started with our buys for this one, and it's going to be with David Fifita, and it's a pretty obvious one, averaging 75 over the first few games, and then in that first game with the 60 was only because he had an infection in his foot, so only had an okay game there, and then picked up 2 tries in our second one, got a HIA, which made him off for 15 minutes, but when you see he got the full 80 minutes, picked up 11 tackle breaks, so you can see with him, he does it everywhere on the field. He can get your base stats and your run meters and your sort of 25 odd tackles to 30 tackles and minimal misses, but then has that massive attacking upside as well. And for Fifita, I think this is probably the lowest he's going to get at this point in the season, unless he happens to get injured or a HIA and he has to come off and doesn't make his break even. But I think it's a really opportune time to bring him into your squad. He's now owned by 31% of people, so really important one. If you don't have him, then he's a really cool upgrade target for some of your mid-range guys if you're downgrading to like a Walker and you can upgrade to a Fifita there. What I will say with him is you're not trading some of these keepers, the 50 to 55 point scorers to trade up to a Fifita. I'm seeing a lot of guys who are trying to trade out a Cook to Fifita, and I think that's a very silly option, but we'll get to him in the hold section. Adam Elliot is my next buy on this list, and the 677 I think is probably going to be the lowest he'll be for the rest of the year. I think I can see him averaging somewhere in the mid-50s, low to mid-50s, and a 677 puts him at around that 48 to 50 price point. In middle and the edge, shouldn't be playing Origin. I think he's a really cool option, making a lot of tackles, getting a lot of your attacking stats as well with his offloads and his tackle breaks, so a really cool option for anyone's side, and not too expensive that you can upgrade a Tino or these types of guys to him for not too much extra cash. Our next one is going to be Sam Walker, which is pretty obvious. He's at 228k, hasn't had any game time, but a really cool downgrade option. Should have the spot long term and should be making some money. I'm not exactly sure what type of points we're going to get. We'll be able to see in this first round, but he's someone that is definitely in the stats when he plays in reserve grade. So if he takes that more dominant role, I think he's going to do really well for anyone's side when they bring him in. Next one's going to be Sean O'Sullivan. I think he's also a good buy. I wouldn't be expecting scores at that 50 mark that he scored in round 1, but somewhere between 35 to 45 would be great for him, just for the fact that they came up against a Raiders side who had three guys out and they were very tired. So you get a bunch of extra tackle breaks that I don't think you'll get on a regular basis, but nice meters gained and kick meters to boot there. 19 tackles for 1 miss is good. He might have a few more over his career. You can see in his past games that he's had a few more missed tackles, but something to think about. And somewhere there will make him enough cash. But, if you've already got Walker in your team, then O'Sullivan is a decent option. Something to think about, though, is that if we're all having, 4 or so halves at the moment, then it might be a little bit too much. I personally have Cleary and Fogarty already. So to have Schuster and then Walker and O'Sullivan, I think is probably a little bit too much. But 4, I think, is a good solid amount to get you those points, but also get you up in those price rises as well. We move on to Andrew Mccullough. I think is definitely a buy at this point. If you're someone that only has Brayley, for example, you're not sitting there with Turpin. You've got Liddle there, but he might be someone that you can cash out over the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks. Then I think Mccullough is a really good option. If you're wanting someone that's really safe and who's almost a captaincy option as well, an average of 63.7 is great. A 67, a 53, and probably should have got a try assist in there, and then a 71. So pretty much all in base. And those last 2 games, he's kicked out a dummy half as well. And I'll probably expect that a little bit more with Ben Hunt out from this week onwards. And it'll be interesting to see how the Dragons go over this next few games. But with their next 5 opponents being Knights, Para, Warriors, Roosters, and Tigers, there should be plenty of tackles in there and a chance for some attacking stats as well against some of the slightly lesser teams in the comp. But Mccullough's a great option, and I think he's definitely a buy for anyone's side. Alex Twal also comes into this category at 714k. Just comes at a slight discount to what a lot of the other guns are at this current point in time. But a 58.7 average with a 52, 54, and a 70 is really cool for him. The minutes in that first game was great, a 59. 50 in the second one was a little bit low, but then picked up a 70-minute game there. So for him, they started struggling a little bit when he was off the field, and it was a great time to bring him on and kind of stifle that and make sure they're not missing tackles and and go from there. And he's that kind of player who's just a beast with the base stats, 70 all-in base stats, 1 tackle break, a couple of turnover tackles, which is going to happen when these guys that make some big tackle counts. So he's a really cool option that you could drop into your side now. He's priced at around that 54 average. So anywhere between 54 and 60, I think, is good for him and could be a nice solid keeper that you don't have to really worry about in your side going forward. Another interesting one in the halves, again, Cody Nikorima at 595. The thing with him is the fact that, unfortunately, we've all got a bunch of halves in our team at the moment, and is it worth bringing in another one at this price when you've got Schuster, you've got Walker, you've got a Cleary or Brooks or these types of guys? I don't think it's really worth bringing him in, but he's someone who's going to do well. I don't think he's going to average 59 for the season, but somewhere around a 50 average would be fairly likely for someone like Cody, and that would get him to gain about 100k and help your team out immensely. OSullivan looks like he's going to do a fair bit more of the kicking in general play. But obviously last game they decided to run the ball a bit more and were trying to get downfield that way, with the tired forwards. So they both ran for over 100 meters there. So something to think about. His kick meters might increase a little bit, but for Cody, I'm expecting somewhere close to a 50 average for him, which would be ideal. Last couple here, we've got someone like Tyrone Peachey, and a few guys have some issues in the centres this week, and my suggestion is not to pick up any of those cheap centres. People asking me about Remus Smith. Who else we got? There's a few other guys there that are in that lower point. Ben Hampton was one that's in the centres, for example. Just all aren't consistent enough and aren't going to score as well as you need them to. Whereas you look at someone like Peachey who's playing, he's now got the starting 13 role. That did decrease his minutes, which is interesting. So I'd still be expecting somewhere between 43 and that 51 minutes as a regular occurrence. But for him, he's just so electric through the middle of the park, and with forwards getting tired, I think he's going to be great. Interesting to see in the game before, he got 0 tackle breaks, which is pretty much not normal for him. He's got a couple of games with one game with 0 over the last year. But other than that, he's someone that gets to 2, 3 plus across these games, and I'd be expecting scores somewhere in the 40s for him at an average. You get the game with 59, but you might get that 34. So where he's at currently is perfect, and I'd be looking to see him as a really decent option, and a keeper in your centres are averaging around that mid 40s. So if you're thinking about him, he's also a good option. And there's a couple other guys that people are speaking about, and I'm not sure if they're going to be a buy, but I think they could average very similar to what they're priced at, or maybe just above. Currently a 53.7 average for Jordan Rapana. I don't think that's sustainable for the season, but I'm expecting somewhere in the 40s for Rapana. If you look at his scores last year, they don't scream out that he was amazing, but in seasons past, he's been that keeper on the wing, getting 40 to 50, and even some of these games, there's some low ones in there with some tries. So he's really come out of the blocks hot, and I'd just be wary that, not exactly sure if he's going to keep that up. 4, 6, and 8 tackle breaks over the first 3 games. Big meters the last couple. You got 2 tries in the first one for 50. So, be wary that if he's not scoring tries regularly, he might not go as good, Rapana. So, something to think about. Other guys like Lomax are going to be a good buy in your centers, but I'd if you're gonna bring in a center this week, I'd suggest upgrading Averillo or trading someone else out to bring in a center that can do well for your squad. We'll move on to the hold side, and I think Jacob Liddle is definitely a hold. Priced at 430 and has a break even of I believe 11. I think this is slightly wrong. For him, 51, 58 over the first 2 games, scored a try, so he likes to run a little bit out of dummy half and look for that quick try out of dummy half there. But 32 in this 60 minutes, I think is a very low game for him. You see the game before, he picked up 1 missed tackle, got 8 in the first and 7 in this one. So if you look at his past games, he doesn't have as many missed tackles as that. And they could be 2 outliers, or that could be normal. But if there's a chance that it goes back to 2 to 3 missed tackles, then you're looking at a score around 40 for him in that 50 to 60 minutes. And he has that upside of potentially scoring a try. So for him, he's definitely not a sell this week. If he picks up a try and gets a 50, he can score well for your side, but also make some cash. So I can see him, getting to around 500k mark and then selling him from there. I think would be a good option, but definitely not a sell right now. Daniel Alvaro at 388 comes off a lower score, and his break even increases a little bit. But for him, there's every chance he could go back to a 35 to 40 score and make you some more cash. So I'd expect Alvaro to bottom out around I said bottom out to peak at around 450 or so, and I think that'll be the time to sell him. But he's still someone you could start in your team if you're having a couple issues or need like a fourth interchange player. Then Alvaro could be your man. So I wouldn't be selling him yet, and very similar to Spencer at 366. So 22k less. Still a fairly low break even, and is only just starting to really make cash. That 29 hurt him a little bit, but a 36 average. If he can keep around that 36 average, then he's going to be up priced around 450, and that will be his peak there. If he happens to get a few more minutes, if there's an injury, then he could go even better. So he's definitely a hold at this point. All right, people talking about Cam Murray, and it's definitely a hold. Like they're going Murray to Fifita, and yeah, you might be getting an extra sort of 10 points out of Fifita, but Murray's a target for a lot of people this week. A mid and edge cover, 57 average, got a 50 on the weekend, but had just less minutes of 59. And this can happen a few times with the forwards. They get a bit of a cycle of minutes, and he could go back to his big minutes as of next week. And I'd expect that to happen. They were obviously winning pretty well on the weekend. So those games are pretty close for him. Then I think he'll play those bigger minutes, and he's definitely a hold. Moving on to someone like Christian Welch. I think he's a hold this week. You can sell him if you need to, or if you want to go up to someone like a Tohu or these types of guys who I forgot to speak about. Tohu is definitely a buy at this stage. He's just so super consistent. So if you want to go up to someone like that or Fifita, I don't blame you. Because when you look at his first two scores, 46 and 55, they're really strong. And he comes out with a 30 in round 3. And I wouldn't expect that this week. I'd be expecting at least a 40, somewhere above that. So if you wanted to, you can keep him. Break even up around the 50 mark, so he's not going to lose a lot, and there's a chance he hits that and doesn't lose any cash and gives you a good score. So some slight worrying signs. I don't think he's a keeper, but at this stage you can probably hold him. And that's going to be the same with Damien Cook at 807k. Price averaging 57 for your team. I think you can hold him. I probably would try to steer clear of captaining him, but just with his chances of getting that lower score. But then he's got the big chance of getting an 80 odd. And up against the Dogs this week, he should score pretty well again. Seems to me against the lesser teams, he's not going to go as well, which is weird. You expect him to be tackling a lot more against the better teams, but against that lesser team in Seagulls, he did really well. And they've got the Dogs, Broncos, Tigers, and Titans over the next 4. So I'd expect some good scores out of Cook, so definitely hold him there. Mitch Moses, people were thinking about getting rid of Mitch Moses. He's just had a HIA, so... And if you're worried about him losing money, I'd please try not to, because he's a keeper. Yes, he might have a high break even, up in the 80s, but he's someone that's priced at 56. So he's a gun in the half, sort of your third best half there, and I'd be keeping him 67 across the first 2 games, and was trekking for somewhere near that score as well in round 3. So I think that he's someone that you definitely have to hold going forward. And then you move to someone like Brooks, and he's going to be in the same boat. 590k, he's priced at 40 at the start of the year. He's averaging 50.3 over 3 games. And yes, there's a chance that Dewey takes a little bit of a few of his stats, but I think you've got to give him a chance. He's averaging 50. If he keeps that up, he's going to get up to around the 700k mark, over the next sort of 4 to 5 weeks. And that's, great. Get extra cash and you get some good scores to boot there. And he didn't have too many attacking stats last game, just the 1 try assist. So for him, he's definitely a hold at this point. I think people are trying to go him up to Cleary, and I can understand that. If you're needing a captain, then maybe going up to Cleary could be a good option. But Brooks, I think, is definitely a hold at this point. Lindsay Collins is another one. Had been scoring really well, and a lot of people brought him in. It looks like he's going to be out for this 1 week. 38 in 41 minutes. He was killing it. So him you have to keep. Unfortunately, take the loss this week, but then get him back, get him back in his starting side and make some good cash with him. Someone else, Stephen Crichton. All right, 447. We had a lot of people that are going, yeah, he's just not scoring enough, not doing as well. And I've spoken about him. He needs to be, for him to do really well, he needs to be scoring tries. And last year he got a lot of them and still wasn't a keeper. So him moving to fullback is a slightly different story. He's gonna get a little bit more ball. You'd expect him to have more run meters and score a little bit better than this 30 average. So for him, I think he's definitely a hold, and he could be someone that could average 40 or 45 over the next bunch of weeks in your center position, which is a really tough position. So I'd be keeping Crichton there over that period. Tyrell Fulmayano is starting to get closer to a peak. A 40 average gets him into the 500s, but if he has a couple more scores in the 30s, then that could slow him down. Still got great minutes with 54, just didn't do anything crazy in terms of attacking stats. 25 tackles, 100 meters, couple of misses, even had a turnover tackle. So did okay, and still I'd be expecting somewhere between 35 to 40 for Tyrell, and can still cover the edge in the mid position. So definitely hold over the next few weeks and milk him and go from there. Jack Bird, a few people are having a bit of an issue this week with Bird and Alvaro, but I think, if you're going off his last two scores of a 40 and a 36, you should be really happy with that output, and he could end up becoming a keeper around that, or close to a keeper around that 40-point average across the season. I think you've got to keep him this week, especially being such a cheaper price. It's not worth trying to downgrade him or something like that at this stage. And Matty Moylan's done actually fairly okay over, especially last week. Got a 37 in round one, a 41 in this round, and didn't do too much, but just a lot of tackles. So for me, he's just started to make a little bit of cash. So you could keep him at this stage, and if you're wanting to use him to upgrade, then you can. But I think you can also hold him across this next few weeks. Some simple ones: Lockie Lamb, definitely a sell, 430k. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks with his MCL issue, but he wasn't making money and scoring amazing anyway. So I think you can get rid of him. Lockie Croker, 361k, starting to slow down his money making. He's sort of made 50 odd k for us, but a break even in the high teens now. For him, if he's scoring that mid to high 20s, then he hasn't got much money to make. You can trade him if you need to. I'm personally going to go him down to Sam Walker, for example. I think he has more upside. But with Croker, you could trade him if you want. You can keep him for a little bit. He could probably bottom out with his price around 400k. But other than that, he's a sell at this stage. Mitch Dunn, also a sell. Made his little bit of cash. Scored okay for us, but played on an injury, and it'll be interesting to see what's happening with him going forward. But he's not a keeper. He's priced at 475. You could use him as a springboard to upgrade or downgrade to help your team elsewhere. With that one, Ben Hunt, unfortunately, I think he's going to be a sell. Ben Hunt at 777. Just too much money on your bench to hold someone who's got a fractured fibula. So for him, unfortunately, if you brought him in round 3, but I think he has to go. Unfortunately, use him to upgrade to whoever you want. If you've got him in your halves, I'd probably suggest upgrading elsewhere. When you've got Schuster, Walker, if you've got a Cleary or a Fogarty or a Munster or something like that, I'd probably upgrade elsewhere and use that money there instead of using it in the halves. The other one I had was Ben. Is that going to work? I had him as a sell at 265. He's just not getting the minutes to make good cash or do anything like that. And if you've got him, I think you've got to get rid of him. Hamiso was my second last one at 354k. Now gets relegated from centre to the wing and just hasn't been scoring well. And in a Cowboy side that's not going very well, I think you have to move him on. If you have him this week and need him to cover in your centre position, then you could probably hold. But other than that, going forward, I think you definitely need to sell him. And Gosefsky is our last one at 303k. You could use him as some sort of cover in the edge, but he's just not doing anything. Playing big minutes, scoring poorly. He's not someone you want in your team long term. So I'd be happy if you wanted to get rid of him and move on to a better cash cow or upgrade him from there. But there you go, guys. That's the buy, hold, and sell for the week. I hope you really enjoyed that. If you enjoyed it, please hit like. Please hit subscribe if you're new, and we'll keep growing this channel. I really appreciate all your love and support, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.